Hey gamers, welcome back to another horrendous episode of Genshin Theory. In this video, I put my characters to the test to find out who the hottest Genshin character is. Our contestants are Hu-Tao, Diluc, Bennett, Xinyan, Amber, Yanfei, Thoma, Xiangling, and Yoimiya. Unfortunately, I don't have every pyro character. I'm missing Dehya and Clay, but I will include them in my calculations and just gather data on them based on some videos online. So it won't really be super accurate, but it's all I got. To start things off, I must explain how we're going to determine the hotness of a character, and that is by how much stuff they can burn around them. I will also be taking into account how fast they can burn things. Another criteria is how related they are to fire, an example being Yoimiya because she creates fireworks and Xiangling because she cooks. So in that case, both of those characters score for that criteria. First things first, let's start with their normal attacks. The only ones who would benefit from this test are, of course, the Catalyst and Bow users, so let's try them out. Amber with C1 gives you like 2 flames, whereas C0 gives 1. Yoimiya, when fully charged, shoots out 3 fire arrows but burns nothing without the homing arrows, unfortunately. Yanfei shoots whole ass fireballs, which is very hot, although it doesn't really burn anything. As it turns out, Clay does AoE pyro damage upon using her normal attacks, which is actually huge because it has very good frequency and fire application, fire per second, FPS, I don't know, but yeah. So Clay wins in normal attacks. Next up, we'll take a look at their skills. Hu-Tao doesn't burn anything until you do a normal attack, and she also burns herself while doing that, so that kind of sucks. Although maybe that's a point to her because she's so hot she's literally burning herself. Moving on to Diluc, he only burns things once he uses skill a second time, so things aren't looking too good for Mr. Man. Amber is starting off good with her skill with a decently sized AoE, although unless you have C2, which gives you the ability to make Baron Bunny explode at any time you want, compared to C0, where you'd have to wait for like, I don't know, 5 seconds or something. So basically C2 gives you more FPS. Fire per second, that is, not frames per second. Next up is Guoba. Yeah, Guoba, not Xiangling, because Guoba is Xiangling's skill. Anyway, Guoba is looking decently hot, I must say. A good pace of fire breathing, although he breathes fire in the same place every time, so unless there's an enemy moving frequently, like around Guoba or something, the AoE won't really spread that much. Next is Thoma, the house husband. Unfortunately, his skill doesn't really produce any fire at all whatsoever, which is very disappointing. Similar to Yoimiya, who also doesn't produce fire with her skill, unfortunately. Next up is Bennett. Holding and tapping his skill does show a small difference in fire size, although tapping is more efficient for producing fire quickly. Moving on to the characters I don't have, Clay is also insane at this category because of her Jumpty Dumpty that produces fire like 12 times. I am honestly flabbergasted while I was watching the collected miscellany. The Jumpty Dumpty, while not producing an impressive amount of fire, still does it 3 times per jump, and on the 3rd jump spreads a bunch of mines that also produce fire. Like they explode once in contact with an enemy or after a short amount of time. Meanwhile, Dehya seems to produce a rather healthy amount of fire judging from the footage I've seen through the collected miscellany. The footage wasn't that great, however, because it was mainly shot in the desert. Moving on to bursts, Amber is absolutely bonkers once more with a good burst AoE. Hu-Tao unfortunately does not really produce an impressive amount of fire with her burst, with it being comparable to Bennett's skill. Diluc is also very good, producing a good length of fire in a straight line, which you can also increase by swinging his claymore, because it gets infused with pyro. Xiangling is around the same as Hu-Tao. Unfortunate that she only burns the ground upon casting the burst though, and not the entire duration of it, otherwise she would have won this category instantly. Next up, Thoma's burst produces minimal fire with a steady pace. Fairly mid unfortunately, but at least he produces fire unlike his skill. Bennett's burst is also pretty mid. While his burst covers a very big area, it doesn't apply fire to the entire thing. Dehya, surprisingly, seems to be insane. She burns a lot of the ground with her bursts, I found this out thanks to the video by nice. I don't know how you pronounce that name, I'm just guessing. I was able to see this in action, although not that well, admittedly. Also, update on Dehya. She's actually freaking insane, skill-wise and burst-wise. Like, ask my Discord server if anyone had Dehya and a Brody pulled through. I asked them to take a screenshot of Dehya with her skill and the burst to see how much fire happens. And by God, this girl is on fire. Claire once again goes crazy, but not as impressive as her skill. The collected miscellany video doesn't show much of the burst burning anything. However, it seems like the skill is still better, or maybe even equal. Next is Xinyan with a mega whopper over here, absolutely insane burst, definitely better than Amber's. Her skill even increases the fire AoE whenever it pulses, however this only happens if her shield is up during her burst. Another banger is Yanfei, whose burst AoE is comparable to Amber's. Finally we got Yoimiya, who I tried on my America account. How much energy do you need, ma'am? Do you see how close I am? That's because I'm using my skill and it drains it. Forgot I have Shimenawa on her. Anyways, so I'm gonna wait until the skill is done just in case. Alright, so moving on to the other factors. We're now past the burning stuff category, so we can now move on to the next part, which is testing how fiery a character can get exactly, like how much fire you can see in their skills and bursts, because that would also determine how hot they are. Technically. First off, Xinyan. She's quite the fiery gal, having fire basically everywhere besides her normal attacks. Characters such as Amber and Bennett, on the other hand, unfortunately aren't super fiery anywhere else besides their attacks. Xiangling is a whole-ass chef, so she's already associated with fire, and Gobo also eats chilies, so Xiangling gets a good score here. Hutao is also pretty decent in this category. She has some fire butterflies in her burst, and also in her sprint animation, I think, although I'm not really sure if those are fire butterflies or just light butterflies. They don't really look like fire butterflies like in her burst, so I don't know. Diluc has a whole phoenix in his burst, so he's fairly hot too, although that's about it, besides I guess his red hair. Dehya is also quite fiery because her burst literally gives her flaming fists. Yoimiya is another good character for this category because she literally makes fireworks, and she also pulls out a small firework thingy in her idle animation. I don't know what you call those, forgive me. Yanfei and Clay are also big contenders because with Yanfei she shoots fireballs, and she has a lot of fire stuff in her skill and burst, even though it doesn't really burn anything. It also makes me wonder if the thing in her skill even is fire, or if it's just a spell thingy like with Chongyun and what's her name, Shenhe, and it just happens to be colored red. And with Clay, well, she's basically the local arsonist, so that's self-explanatory. And last but not the least, my guy Toma, whose only upper hand in this category, unfortunately, is his fire shield. Right, so we're moving on to the final part of the video. I'm gonna coalesce all the information I've provided throughout the video and come up with a conclusion, and then finally determine who the hottest Genshin character is. Let's start with our top 5. Number 5 is Diluc with his big PP burst, which you can even increase the AoE of by swinging his pyro-infused claymore after the fiery eagle disappears from the frame. Unfortunately though, it doesn't apply pyro with every swing, similar to his skill only producing fire 1 out of 3 times. And number 4 goes to Dehya, the Fister sister. Her AoE is insane, her punches are flame, and I do not have her in the game. Moving on to 3rd place, we got Xiangling, the chef that makes spicy dishes with a sidekick that was previously a god, now turned adorable chili-eating, flame-breathing bear. Next up, we got our homie in 2nd place, Amber, with her absolutely insane pyro applications. Baron Bunny and her burst both have a great AoE, and she also shoots fire arrows, which ups her FPS even more. So of course she'd be in a good spot. Now we're left with one more spot, but before I get to number 1, I must honorably mention our honorable mention, and that is Yanfei, our fireball throwing lawyer. Unfortunately, the only reason she's this high up is because of the fireballs. She's fairly weak compared to like everyone else in the top 5. Alright, so numero uno. Ladies, gentlemen, and everyone else in between, I present to you the official hottest Genshin character of all time based on my calculations and as of version 3.6. It is... It's clear. Well, I guess in that case it shouldn't be the official hottest Genshin character, but the official Genshin Fire Queen or Princess. I don't know. With all that being said, congratulations to Cliff for being very fiery. Although all of this is of course just a theory. A Genshin theory. Stay safe and stay hydrated. See ya.